Can't get a picture on it. Don't know why not.
Okay, welcome everybody to this brown hairstreak butterfly monitoring training session, which is quite a mouthful. So just a reiteration for those who weren't here when we started, please can you all keep your microphones muted throughout this. You can use the chat function, which I will be monitoring throughout if you have questions, and we'll be doing questions at the end. So this is part of the Saving Devon's Treescape project, which is a new project this year. We are looking to plant and nurture 250,000 trees outside of woodlands across Devon over the next 5 years. Is the main goal, but within that we've also got lots of citizen science elements, of which brown hairstreak butterfly monitoring is one of them. So we are very lucky this evening to have Jenny Packett from Butterfly Conservation with us, who will be leading the training session. Do you want to say hello, Jenny?
Hello everybody.
You'll be hearing lots from Jenny this evening. We also have Jess Morecambe from DBRC, who is also supporting this. And if you want to continue with the training, she'll be the one you speak to. Do you want to say hello, Jess?
Hi everyone. Hello.
And then finally, we also have Ruth Worsley from East Devon AOMB, who I think some of you have come through as well. So Ruth is also here supporting. Do you want to say
Great.
hello, Ruth?
Yes, good to be with you tonight. Thank you.
Brilliant. So that's the four of us. So the Saving Devon's Treescape project, just so you're all aware as a bit of background, it's a partnership project which is covering all of Devon. We are funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, as well as other funders such as Tesco Bags for Life, One Tree Planted, and Devon County Council. We've got lots of different elements of the project, so you can always look on the Devon Wildlife Trust website, so you can see how else to get involved. We're here due to Devon ash dieback and the loss that we're due to see. But yeah, everything's on the website, so you can take a closer look there. Now, this evening is all dedicated to the brown hairstreak butterfly, so I'll pass you over to Jenny, who will explain everything.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, and welcome everybody. It's amazing to see you, so many of you. It's really encouraging that you're all here and obviously so interested in the brown hairstreak butterfly, and hopefully in helping to help us with the training that we've got planned for this winter. It's a fairly mammoth task, really. We've got well, we're hoping to cover pretty much the whole of Devon and the Blackthorn Hills with our survey this year. The previous survey was carried out, sort of comprehensive survey anyway, was carried out in 2014. So it's been a few years, it's about time, 5 years on, that we're really keen to re-establish what the current status of this butterfly is in terms of its distribution across Devon. So we really would like to get a more comprehensive map of the butterfly across Devon, and hopefully by the end of this talk you'll feel confident and fully equipped to be able to help us to do that. So my talk is going to cover briefly the distribution as we know it at the moment of the brown hairstreak across the UK and across Devon. I'll give you a bit of background on the butterfly and its life cycle. We'll look a little bit at what makes good brown hairstreak habitat and what is unsuitable habitat. We'll look at how we survey for the butterfly using egg surveys, how to complete the survey form, and then how to send back your data to Butterfly Conservation and the Devon Biological Records Centre using either the survey app that we'll look at or survey forms that you can send back by email or on paper. So hopefully you'll find ways to engage with this, and it's something that we can do over the next few months over the winter as well. So the distribution of the butterfly, the map here on the left shows the sites where the butterfly has been recorded since 1976. The blue circles and crosses show the sites where it hasn't been recorded since 2010. So the blue circles, crosses are really thought possibly to be extinct, and the red and yellow sites are those that have been recorded during surveys between 2010 and 2014 across the UK. So it's quite a southerly distributed species. but has had significant declines both in terms of distribution and abundance, 49% decline in distribution and 15% declines in abundance since 1976, or over the period between 1976 and 2014. The Devon picture is there on the right. So these are the results of egg surveys that have been carried out between 2010 and 2014. So this winter, we're really hoping to get some more dots on this map to reflect a much more comprehensive set of surveys over the coming winter. So just some background on the butterfly. It's a very elusive butterfly, quite difficult to spot, spends a lot of time at the tops of trees and really out of our sort of eye range. It's the largest of the family of hairstreak butterflies, and it's the latest of those to emerge in the year. It doesn't come out as an adult butterfly until mid to late July. It's found in hedges and scrub and woodland fringe habitats, generally always where blackthorn is abundant, because the females lay their eggs on blackthorns. Occasionally other prunus species are used as well, but it's really a blackthorn species. As I say, populations have declined, and this is primarily due to post-war hedgerow removal, and more recently down to sort of inappropriate hedgerow management, really, where annual flailing or trimming of the hedges can actually just cut off the eggs and they die. So appropriate hedgerow management can be the saving grace really for this species. It forms very small colonies at low density, so generally you don't see large numbers of this butterfly at any point. It can be just 3 or 4 adult butterflies across a whole length of maybe 1 kilometre of hedgerow, so very low numbers but quite widespread. And that can be quite a problem for them in order that they, to be able to find a mate. They're so widespread that, or widely spread, they really need these master trees or assembly trees, which are often prominent ash trees, and they will hang out at the tops of these ash trees, and that's where they meet, and the males and females will find a mate and breed. The males spend most of their lives at the top of these trees, where they just feed on the honeydew, which is produced by aphids on the tops of these trees. So a little bit more about the life cycle next. So the adults are generally on the wing from July to September, and it's, as I say, the males generally emerge first and hang out at the top of these prominent master trees, these ash trees, and then the females will generally go to these ash trees to find a mate. The females are generally most commonly seen because they're the ones that will come down to the sort of lower level, down to where the hedgerows are, to lay their eggs. So the eggs are laid from about August into late July into September, and they're usually laid singly on blackthorn. Occasionally you see 2, 3, or sometimes 4 eggs all in one patch, but usually they're laid individually in a single spot. And the larvae begin their development phase before they go into the winter hibernation period. So they start their development inside the egg before winter, and they complete that development the following spring. So they're actually in their egg stage between August until April, pretty much. It's quite a long stage to be in as an egg, and then the caterpillar emerges, as I say, fully formed in April, and it eats its way out of the shell. So the picture on the right there shows the sort of very black centre there, which is actually a hole, where the caterpillar has eaten its way out of the shell. And a lot of caterpillars will actually eat the whole of the rest of their shell as their sort of first meal, but brown hairstreaks just cut themselves a little hole to get out, and then they move on to young leaf buds. So that old now unoccupied egg is actually visible for sometimes several weeks or even months after it's been vacated. So the caterpillar will then move on to the young buds and feed on those, and then excuse me, and then as those buds unfurl, and it then moves on to feeding onto the young and tender leaves. Then it has 3 instars, so it sheds its skin 3 times before, as it feeds and sort of increases in size. And then by about late June, early July, it crawls to the ground or drops to the ground, where it will pupate, and then it will be just down at the ground level in amongst the leaves for a few weeks before the adult butterfly then emerges again to begin the cycle all over again. So these are some examples of some really nice suitable habitat. So really they use hedgerows, woodland edge, woodland ride, scrubby corners, any areas where there is a good abundance of blackthorn, and preferably where those hedges and woodland areas are actually well connected to each other, so that the butterfly can fly along the hedgerow, find these master ash trees and find their mate. So what makes good brown hairstreak habitat? Ideally, it's young growth that's required, but especially between 1 and 3 year old blackthorn growth. They prefer a nice sunny and sheltered position, so the hedgerows that are running along a sort of east-west axis are preferred because they've got a very sunny south-facing aspect to them. And usually the eggs are laid between about 1/2 metre and 1.5 metres or so above ground level. But we have found them as low as 3 centimetres off the ground and as high as 2 metres above the ground as well. So it's quite a wide sort of range, but the majority of eggs are found between 1/2 metre and about 1.5 metres, sort of about waist height really. So blackthorn suckers are commonly used as well. So those are the kind of young saplings that are growing out from the edges of hedges. They're very commonly used. And scrubby patches at field corners as well are really popular. But again, these master trees are a very important feature of the sort of brown hairstreak habitat. And as I say, they're very important for enabling the butterflies to congregate. In terms of the management, the annually cut and flailed hedges are a real threat because the eggs tend to be laid on the protruding stems, which are the ones that are cut off during the trimming process. And then obviously they're killed in that process. But the ideal management is where you have your hedgerows managed on a rotational basis, so that every 3 to 5 years they get trimmed. And if you have a farm or a holding, then you try and make sure that 1/3 of your hedges are cut in any 1 year, so that there's always some suitable habitat for the butterfly to move into. So here's just some general examples of suitable looking habitat, quite mixed sort of look to it really. And just to point out, hopefully you can see my cursor moving here, but this area here is where you've got some suckering blackthorn that's coming out from the edge of this sort of scrubby patch, and these areas have all had eggs on. So that's a sort of typical really nice little patch of sort of rough edges to fields, which are very suitable. And this is less suitable, so this is a hedge that's been quite heavily flailed, and both on this side, obviously it's been cut, but even on this side, where the stock have come in, if it's been grazed heavily on the other side, then again that will be unsuitable, and that will need to recover for a year or 2 before it could become suitable to support the butterfly again. Again, these twigs are unsuitable, so we've got some quite mature growth here. This middle twig is showing quite a lot of lichen growth on it, so really unsuitable mature examples of blackthorn twigs that wouldn't be used. But these twigs at the bottom here, relatively young, so it's really 1 to 2 year old blackthorn twigs that are the most commonly used for egg laying, and particularly, as I say, those ones that are used that are growing out from hedgerows and sort of suckering out. So why do we survey for eggs? Because it seems like they're much more difficult to spot than the butterfly. And in normal cases, for most butterflies, that's absolutely the case. But brown hairstreak is very elusive, and as I was saying, it hangs out at the tops of the trees, and it's really difficult to see from underneath, compared to the eggs, which are really easy to spot once you get your eye in. They are tiny, the size of a sort of pinhead really, but they stick out. They really shine out from, you know, when you're looking when you've actually got your eye in and you're looking for these tiny eggs. They glisten, they shine, they're bright white, set against a very dark bark on the blackthorn, so much easier to spot. They don't move like butterflies do. They are visible between sort of August and April time, so you've got a long survey season. Doesn't really matter what the weather is, unless it's, you know, snowing or frosty or really, really foul, when you wouldn't want to be out anyway. So it's just pragmatic really. It's much easier to survey for this butterfly by recording the eggs. So just a quick word on ID for hawthorn and blackthorn twigs. Some people have asked about trying to distinguish between the two. Very simple when you get your eye in, but again, the blackthorn here on the right hand side, it's got a very dark bark to it. Unfortunately, I took these photos indoors and you can't really see the difference, but this is a much more creamy brown coloured bark. The spines on blackthorn are really quite vicious, and the leaf buds grow out from the spines of the blackthorn, where on a hawthorn they tend to be shorter, equally vicious, but not as long as the spines on the blackthorn. And also the leaves and the spines grow out, you know, the spine grows out from the leaf bud, the same point on the twig as the leaf bud, where these grow out on the spines. So that's just a quick ID thing. And in terms of where the eggs are found on the blackthorn, they're really found in forks and joints and notches of blackthorn, particularly where new growth is growing out from older growth. So where there's a new growth meeting an older stem, or near buds and forks on young growth as well, and also at the base of thorns. And they can be generally they're on this sort of upper side, so when you look down you can see them here, but they can also be underneath the joint as well. But not every egg that you find on blackthorn is going to be a brown hairstreak. So just to make you aware of that, really, it is really useful to have a lens, a hand lens, or a macro camera where you can take photos of close-up photos, or even if you download an app onto your phone, which is a magnifying app, then you can actually get a really good view of a close-up of some of these eggs. Probably most of the ones that you see will be brown hairstreaks, but just to go through some other ones that you might come across. So these 4 pictures are obviously not going to confuse you. They lay multiple eggs. They're all moth eggs here, and they're really not similar at all to the brown hairstreak, which is this one here. In some areas of the country, or particularly in the East Midlands, you might confuse it with the black hairstreak egg, which is also white when it's initially laid, and then it goes brown over a period of time. But we don't have black hairstreak down here in Devon, so you don't have that problem with trying to identify between the two. You might come across blue bordered carpet moth eggs, but hopefully you wouldn't be fooled by these, because they look quite different. They're much flatter and elongated, and not really very similar if you can zoom in on them. If you've got your hand lens and you can get a good view, I don't think you'll be troubled with identifying those. But just to be aware, that they're there. But the one that you might confuse with is the green brindled crescent moth, which is present in Devon. It's not uncommon, and so you may well find eggs of this moth species, which also overwinter on Blackthorn. But if you look closely again with the hand lens, you'll see that the pattern here, so I'm losing my mouse, here we are, the pattern is sort of a series of sort of ridges and furrows, which is quite different from this sort of more pitted globular shaped egg, really. So when you can look closely, you'll see that the appearance is actually very different, but from a distance you could easily mistake some of these other species. So just to be aware that it may not necessarily be a brown hairstreak, and if you can get a decent photograph, then we'd be more than happy to identify it for you. But I think once you get your eye in, and if you've got a lens, then you'll be able to see for yourselves what it is. So what we're trying to do is to really assess the distribution of the butterfly across the whole of Devon and the Black Downhill. So as I say, it is a massive undertaking, but we're really focusing on the distribution rather than the abundance of the butterfly. So we want to cover as many grid squares of the county that we can. So Ordnance Survey have obviously mapped the whole of the UK into 1 kilometre grid squares. And what we would like you to do, if you're interested in participating, is to get in touch and let us know your postcode, let us know where you are and where you're interested in searching. And we can then assign you with as many of these 1 kilometre squares as you would be interested in taking on. And then what you would need to do is check out your square, have a look at aerial images, which we can talk about in a minute, to see where the accessible hedgerows and areas are. So really we obviously only want people to get out into areas which are open access and where there is a public right of way to go. So we don't want to encourage anybody to do any trespassing. So all the sites that we would like you to visit will need to be open access and publicly accessible areas. So you'll be given a map of your areas, and you'll then look at the areas on the computer or on the Bing maps, which I'll show you in a minute, and work out where the hedgerows are that are accessible. And then you would visit your 1 kilometre square to assess the suitability of the hedgerow. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute in terms of what makes a suitable hedge for brown hairstreak. Initially, you'll focus on the previous locations of previous records, and they will be marked on the map that you will be given. And then when you get out into the field and you see where your suitable hedgerows are, you then search 100 metres of that hedge for 30 minutes and record the number of eggs that you see and various other details, which we'll look at in a minute. So if you don't find any eggs after 30 minutes, then you would record a nil result, and then you can repeat that effort twice more in the same square before you then would move on to the next square. So ideally you'd survey the 1 kilometre squares that you've been assigned by us in the first instance, and then if you want to do any more, then you could get in touch about covering further areas. Ultimately, what we would love to do is to revisit all the squares where there have been previous sort of records historically and confirm, hopefully, that there are presents there still. And then we would like to move out to adjacent areas where there are suitable hedgerows and check those as well. And it would be great if we can start putting some new dots on those maps to show that hopefully the distribution in Devon is increasing. But we'll see. So this is an example of the records for the Exeter area. So here we have Exeter in the middle here, and all of these dots, the blue dots, show the records, old records of brown hairstreak dating back to prior to 2017, and the red squares and dots show records from 2018 and 2019. So these blue squares are the 1 kilometre grid squares where there are records. So what we would be very keen to do is to hear from you if you're interested in taking on one of these squares. So say, for example, you live in Clifton Mary here, and you would get in touch with us and we can say, okay, well, there's a couple of squares that are not too far from you if you're interested in taking those on. We would then map those 2 squares and send you a map that looks a little bit like this. So these are the 2 squares that you've been allocated. And so taking this one first, so this is, the grid square is SX9792. So we would be keen for you to then take your map and look at where the accessible routes are, where the open access is or the public rights of way, and then look at where they sit alongside hedgerows, or whether they are routes along hedgerows. So we've got a clue here because we can see that that blue dot is a record, a previously made record of brown hairstreak. But we want to know whether, so I mean, it's a good start to revisit initially where that record was from. And it would also be useful to know where other hedges are in this square. So you've got, you can see that you've got a public access route here. That's a public right of way. There's also a public right of way here. And then potentially this lane may be, is clearly public right of way and may have hedgerows along it as well. So in order to save time, it's good to do a bit of research ahead of going out to visit your 1 kilometre square. Just to think, okay, well, where am I going to park, and where am I going to focus my effort in the first instance? So clearly it might be an idea to check out this area in the first instance. So I'm just going to zip over, hopefully this will work, into the Bing Maps. So this is usually working. Here we go. This is Bing Maps. So it's bing.com/maps. And this brings up all the maps from the whole of the UK. It's a really, really useful website. And you can zoom in. So if we look on the square, we can see that the A30, where it goes underneath the M5, our square is just about south of the A30, next to the M5. So if we go on to Bing Maps, we can zoom in to where the A30 joins the M5, and we can have a look. And you can click on this, and you can either view in aerial or road, or you can do ordnance survey. So this is the map that we've sent you, basically, of that grid square. So you can zoom in, and that's basically what we were looking at before. And we know that there was a record that was about here on the map that we sent you. So we want to see what sort of hedge situation is here, and maybe it might be also quite useful to see whether there's any hedges along some of these other footpaths and also down the lane and the road. So we can click in this box, and there's the aerial option. So if we click on aerial, it's actually quite useful to see where those hedges are. So where our record was about here. We can zoom in a little bit more. So we can see, oh yeah, that looks quite a nice sort of mixed hedge there. A few standard trees as well. The record was from somewhere around here. So that might be where you might focus your search. And if you didn't find anything there, we can have a look and see where the other footpaths were. So this was one here, and then over here as well. So looking at that, that looked like a nice wooded potential area there. So that's the way that you could save a bit of time and work out where you're going to focus your effort. And also you might think, oh, I could maybe park here, or, you know, so you could just spend a bit of time planning your your trip before you head out. It's time well spent. Okay, so if we go back into slideshow, and oh, hang on a second, display settings. Okay, so hopefully you can now see my screen again, or my presentation. So once you've decided which bit of hedgerow you're going to focus on, you then need to assess whether or not it's actually suitable as breeding habitat for the brown hairstreak. And for that, you need to have at least one of these 6 criteria present in the suitable column, not necessarily present, so it needs to be in the suitable column. So of young black, the absence of old and lichen encrusted growth, not to have just been flailed, and more than 20% of blackthorn in the hedge. If it's got all those criteria, that will be amazing. But if there's at least one criteria from the suitable column, then it's worth doing a survey. If there are no criteria in the suitable section, then it isn't worth your time to survey it. So move on to another bit of hedge within your same 1 kilometre grid square. And you can visit up to 2 more sections in the same square. But if none are suitable, then for that square, just record a nil count and then move on to your next square if you've been allocated or assigned to more than 1. Hopefully that makes sense. So now you've got your suitable hedgerow and you know where you are. You then need to work out which bit of the hedge you're going to survey. That doesn't really matter which bit, it's just a 100-metre section. So you have to plan first which 100 metres you're going to do and decide on your start and end point of your hedge, and ideally record the start and end points with the GPS as well. So you can then start your survey once you know where you're going to survey, and ideally remember to record the time, because it's a timed count for 30 minutes and it's quite easy to get going without actually recording your start time. And then you fill out the survey form as you're going. So just briefly a few words about the survey form. It's your site name in there, which will have been agreed with Jess, well, agreed with us, and I'll tell you about Jess in a minute, agreed with us what the site name is, and also you put your square number in there. So in this instance it was square, I think it was 9762 or whatever, so you put the square in there, your name in here and the date, and then whether the hedge, if it was a hedge, was alongside a field or a footpath or a track, etc., or if it wasn't a hedge habitat, whether it was infield scrub, woodland edge or woodland ride. And if you can make an estimate on the frequency of blackthorn in your hedge as well, or in the feature, that would be helpful. And then the time, the distance or length that you've searched. So generally that would be 100 meters, but for some reason it may be different from that. So if you specify what your length search was in there, and here if you put your start and end grid references. So if you do have a GPS or a phone with a location on it and you can specify the 8-figure grid references, that's great, or 10 figures. And if not, then 6-figure grid reference on the map is fine to start and end there. And if you can give us a bit of information about the condition of hedge, that would be helpful, and the adjacent land use as well. The aspect, south facing, north facing, east, whichever, would be helpful as well. And if you can get it from the OS map or from the GPS, the elevation is also useful to have. If there's any signs of browsing along the field, the hedge boundary, please tick the box there. If there's any signs of sheep or cow grazing or browsing, tick in there. And then this bit generally will be a 30-minute slot, so it's the duration of the search, which is in person minutes, so mostly it'd be 30 minutes. But if there were 2 of you, it's really the total search time. So ideally, if you're doing this with someone else, then you would work out your 100-meter area to survey, and then you would walk from sort of either end and then meet in the middle, and each search for 15 minutes. So your total person minute count will still be 30 minutes, but there would have been 2 of you doing that, if that makes sense. And then this box, we put the total number of eggs that you've recorded, which are from one of A, B and C zones, and these zones relate to the second page of the form. There's only 2 pages, don't worry, and it's just to be clear about which bit of the hedge or of the scrub the egg was found on. So zone A is above waist height in the main sort of body of the hedge, and zone B is sort of suckering growth below, and then zone C is where you've got those individual little shrubs that are kind of pushing out from the hedge, and they're about 3 meters away from the hedge. So zone A, B or C. So that how many eggs were seen in zone A, zone B and zone C can be added into this page. And then on the second page, if you can break down those individual egg records onto this table, which would be egg number 1, 2, 3, 4 down here, and it might be eggs numbers 1 to 4 if they were all on the same spot. And then you record the height that the egg was found above ground level. So a tape measure is quite useful to be able to record the height that the egg was found. And then the aspect of that bit of Blackthorn, and then again the zone, which relates to these the zone area down here. And any notes, maybe you could say 4 eggs all found at once, or anything else that comes to mind that you think might be relevant can go in there. And if you have a photo, you could insert it or attach it to this place. So once you've filled that form in, you've got various options on how to get that data to us. So you could just send in, print the form off, write on it in the field, and then send the paper form to us. You could write on it in the field and then upload that data to a Word document and email it to us. Or you could go on to the Devon Treescapes.com website, and there's an app which is currently under development, but I'm assured it will be finished hopefully by Wednesday, but we'll see. But hopefully, certainly by the end of the week, this app should be up and running, and it asks exactly the same questions as there's a survey form. It's very small to see, but you can see here it says site name, 1 kilometre square, recorder name, date, etc. So it's all exactly the same information is being asked for on these on the Word document version. But it's obviously very easy just to kind of click in the various boxes and upload your data that way. So if you're happy to use an app, to download an app and then submit your data in that way, then it should be possible to do it by the end, say the end of this week, fingers crossed. Keep your eyes peeled. But Devon Treescapes is the website, and we'll send a copy of this video or this recording and all the information you need anyway, so there's no need to write anything down for now. So quick kit list, which might be helpful to things to remember to take out with you. Survey instructions, obviously, just to remind you on what you're meant to be doing. Pen, survey form, print out or download the app onto your phone. A hand lens is really, really useful because it enables you to see close-up eggs, and well, partly it's a joy when you can see images like this one close up. They are really exquisite formations, these eggs, so to be able to see them through the hand lens just brings the whole process of surveying for them to life. So I really would encourage you, if you can. The hand lenses that they sell at NHBS, the website, sort of ecological supplies, environmental supplies websites for surveys and things. I think they're about £10 or £12, and you can follow the link on that on this PowerPoint page to find them, or just search on NHBS, or you probably get them on Amazon and various other websites as well. But you want one that's got a 10 times magnification, really, at least, which will be high enough quality to be able to really see this level of detail. Alternatively, if you've got a camera with a macro lens, that's great as well, or you can download an app with a magnification facility on it. Anyway, you do need to really be able to get a good view of these eggs to be sure that that's what they are. So GPS is really useful, or a phone with location, and or an OS map, so you can fill in the start and end points, the aspect, and also the elevation if you can as well. As I say, a tape measure is quite useful, because then you can measure the height of the egg above ground. And another little thing which a very experienced surveyor suggested to me was actually some red wool that you can mark the locations of these eggs with, so that if you're interested to revisit and see how the egg is looking, and to see whether the caterpillar has emerged next April, then you can mark the location with red wool, and you can revisit your egg site later in the season. And then a couple of other things, just health and safety things really. Protective glasses, because blackthorn is really nasty. You don't want to get poked in the face, or certainly not in the eye. And a high-vis jacket is quite useful as well if you're going along a roadside. And obviously you do need to be aware of traffic and things as well. So last few bits really. Generally, weather-wise, you can pretty much do it in any weathers that you would want to be out in. So avoiding heavy rain and fog and snow and frost and so on, and also glare. So if it's a really, really bright sunny day, it's quite tiring looking for eggs in a very glary environment. But generally, you can just survey for eggs pretty much any kind of weather. Timing of it, ideally between October and late March. You just need to wait for the leaves on the blackthorn to fall, because it's quite tricky to find the eggs when the leaves are still present, but I think they've pretty much fallen by now. So now's a good time, right the way through until January is really recommended, but you can go on longer than that. If you go on longer than that into sort of February, March time, then there's more chance that there'll be sort of predation by birds on the eggs, or that they might be diseased, or there may be some kind of fungal infection. So the longer you leave it, the less obvious those eggs become as well, because initially they're very bright and white, and really shine out against the sort of black bark of the blackthorn. But as time goes on, they sort of fade a little bit. They're not quite as bright and not quite as easy to spot. In terms of timing, any time when there's good light levels, really between 9 and 3, 4 o'clock is fine. And then one other thing is the travel expenses. So you can be reimbursed for any travel that you make. So we'll send you details about that when you register to take on your squares. And then in terms of health and safety, really just need to read and follow the risk assessment again, which will be sent when you register. Obviously adhering to any government COVID guidelines that are happening at the time, and then taking care when you're surveying along roads or lanes and watching out for traffic. And as I said before, best to wear a high-vis jacket, just so that you're more obvious to passers, but to traffic really coming by. And again, taking care of the blackthorn twigs, wearing protective glasses if you can, if you don't wear specs already, and really avoid handling blackthorn, because the thorns are really painful, and they can create quite a nasty infection if you cut the skin. So finally, what happens next? So if you are interested in helping out with the survey, if you could contact Jess Smallcombe from the Devon Biological Record Centre, and agree where you're going to focus your search on. So following this talk in the next few days. Everybody who's registered will be sent a link so you can watch this talk all over again, and you'll also be invited to contact Jess, and we'll give you Jess's email details in that email as well. And if you then get in touch with her, if you let her know your postcode or the area that you would like to focus your search on, then she will come back to you with a map of the or some suggestions to assign you various grid squares, or however many grid squares you would like to take on. She'll then email you a map of the area together with a reminder of the survey instructions and a Word document of the survey form, plus a risk assessment and travel expenses claim, and then set you on your way. So then all you need to do is follow the instructions, carry out your survey and complete the form, and then submit the data either using that app or by sending the survey form, either paper form or electronically by email, back to Jess. All the details to get in touch with Jess are on that slide. And finally, if you have completed your squares, or when you have completed your squares that she has assigned to you, then if you could let her know, make sure you've sent your data in. But if you don't think you're going to manage to complete any squares that you've signed up for, that's totally fine, of course, but just let us know so we can reallocate those to other recorders in the area. So I think that was everything. So if there are any questions, then I would be pleased to take them.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was incredibly interesting and informative. So I hope everyone...
I can't see if everybody's fallen asleep or not.
I hope everyone found that as interesting as I did. There are some questions in the chat box, so I will read them out, but if anyone wants to add extra ones, then please just type them in the box and we'll get Jenny to answer them. I'm still aiming to finish at 7, so we'll work quickly through this. One that's not a question, but I think a very good point to add to the kit list, is it can get very cold when you're moving slowly over 30 minutes, so make sure you also dress in lots of warm clothes.
Yeah, well done, thank you, good point, yes.
And someone has also said that they managed to find some eggs at 2.4 meters once, which is also...
Oh, I need to change my slide. Great, excellent, okay.
So I won't my way through the questions.
South, they range in heights, but yeah, excellent.
So the first one, are they found on young trees or young branches? If an old tree is pruned and new shoots are made, will they lay on those new shoots?
Yes, they will do. It's really to restore those hedges, to make them more suitable for the butterfly. It's just the trimming that is required. So if they can be incorporated into more of a rotational trimming management program, then they will become suitable. Yeah.
Right. And is the egg always laid in the joint between a thorn and a stem?
No, it can be underneath a bud. I mean, they are usually always in a joint, around it, under it. Yeah, I would say mostly, but not always. It's worth kind of casting your eye generally over the twig. I've got photos of ones that are actually about that far above joints, but that's to get your eye in where you're most likely to see them. They are in the joints.
I think this one is in relation to Blackthorn. Are they sloes?
It's the shrub that sloes grow on, yes.
And what if you find a suitable hedge that is less than 100 meters?
Yeah, so that's an example when you might survey it anyway, but you would put in there the distance that you have surveyed, and that's a genuine reason why you might actually end up surveying less than 100 meters of it. But yeah, so it would be useful to know approximately what that distance was that you have covered, and so that's why if you can pace it, it gives you a reasonable. I mean, I know that I walk about 60 paces to 100 meters plus or minus, and I'm 5'6", but if you're much taller than that or much shorter, you might do more or less, or rather less or more than that. So it would be helpful to know approximately what distance you do survey if you find a suitable hedge which is less than that, but it is definitely worth it, because some people find them in their garden. You know, we still want those records.
Great. Is there a set ratio for the number of eggs found per area to indicate a population's health or the strength of the population?
I'm going to say no. It's quite variable, and certainly you will see more eggs in an area like, for example, at Belvedere in Exeter. I know that the team there found a lot of eggs, surprisingly, you know, like 20 eggs in a relatively small, short section. So yes, it does reflect a higher abundance in that area, but I don't think that there is a set ratio of how many, you know, eggs you would find. But certainly the more eggs you find, the stronger, larger that population will be in that area.
So in relation to the form, what if the hedge is on a field edge and a footpath? Which box would you tick?
Sorry, say that again. If the
hedge is on a field edge and a footpath, so if the hedge covers two of the boxes,
both.
Tick both.
Yeah. It's not an either.
Great. And how do you tell if a hedge has been trimmed compared to failed?
Trimming
sorry.
and flailing, that's fine. I mean, a hedge can be a flailing is just a type of trimming, really. But it's about how deeply into the hedge it's been cut back. And if it's been really taken off hard, then the stems tend to be quite a bit bigger and more mushed at the ends, really, if you go in deeper. So if it's very lightly flailed, and you can still see some young shoots that didn't quite make the flail, then that's probably still a suitable hedge. But if it's gone in quite deep, then anything that would have been, any eggs that would have been laid on the sort of first 18 inches would have been chopped off.
Okay, so if you have an area with blackthorn, a hedge with blackthorn that is scrubbing up naturally, i.e. it's not cut for years, is there any management to encourage young suckers, young shoots, or will enough young shoots come naturally without management?
Oh, that's an interesting question. If it was a reasonable length, I would try a bit of each, really. I would vary that and cut some of it and see what comes back. I think some areas have got just some excellent suckering growth. Some of the photos that I showed in the presentation earlier, which the stuff at the back was quite mature, but the stuff was just constantly marching out. And I think every area is a little bit different. But if you've got a range of young growth and older growth and freshly cut growth and not uncut growth, then that variety and diversity is the best, really. So if you can do a bit of a rotation, really, on that section that you're talking about, and do just part of it and then monitor how it comes back.
Great. What about blackthorn trees? So this person has one which extends for many meters in width and is very thick. It starts about head height, and it's on the edge of a small copse.
I would say probably not suitable for egg laying, because it's very difficult without seeing it, but I think they tend to lay low. So the majority of eggs are laid between, as I say, 0.5 metre and about 1.5 metres. So if the tree is much higher than that, then they probably wouldn't get up that high, although they do congregate around these master trees, which aren't blackthorn trees. They're usually, as I say, ash trees, which generally tower above the hedgerows or the adjacent woodlands. So it's not that they can't fly high, it's just that the females choose to lay their eggs low down. Well, somebody did report that they reported them at 2.4 metres, but that's really the exception to that rule. So if that tree has not got any young growth coming out the bottom of it, I would say it's probably wouldn't be used for egg laying.
Okay, I can quickly answer this in that I will send round this presentation as a PDF to everyone who has signed up. So yes, you'll get a copy of the presentation, so that's no problem. I think I missed one. How can we encourage farmers not to flail annually? Big question.
That's a huge question. Yes. I think you could go down the line of cost, really, because it's actually cheaper not to flail every single year. So I think that economically is a good incentive. But I think if you can just get across how important it is to have that the diversity in our hedges, to have more flowering hedge species and more that are able to go through to producing berries. They're so much more valuable for our wildlife, not just butterflies. The wildlife value of our hedges is so much greater when you allow that rotation to come in and the variety of age and structure. So I think if landowners can I think partly it's about education as well, and encouraging people to be a bit more aware about how their management can have such positive impacts for wildlife. And then the cost that comes in as well. So it's cheaper. Why wouldn't you? I think it's about dispelling the need for being really neat and tidy, and instead of landowners being, pleased that they trim right back down to the, nth degree, encouraging landowners to be a bit more competitive about how much wildlife they've got on their land instead of how neat it is.
And then, as if I planned it, we've got a couple of questions linking it all the way back to the Saving Devon's Treescape project, asking, is ash dieback going to affect brown hairstreak butterflies in the future?
Good question. Yeah, I think it almost certainly will, and I think that it will be interesting to see as some of our really mature ash trees die off and can no longer support those, be the master tree anymore, whether they are able to find alternative species to use as those kind of assembly trees instead. So possibly oak trees might be used. Occasionally other trees are used, but they are mostly ash. So I think, it will be interesting to see, really, to do more monitoring on that.
Yeah, and exactly, that's exactly why this is part of the Saving Devon's Treescape project, is so that we can, hopefully, we're going to be a 5-year project, so we can monitor every year and really start to see whether ash dieback is going to be having an effect. And yeah, where again across the county as well might be most affected, whether there are areas that are getting harder hit. So that's why it's really vital at the moment, always at the moment as well, to monitor this and do it regularly. I did say that's the final question. There is one more, and then we will finish. So the final question is: can you please clarify for the 30 minutes? Is it for the whole of the 1 kilometre square, even if there are, for example, 3 separate bits to search in the kilometre, or is it 30 minutes per 100 metre section?
Yeah, good question. So it's 30 minutes per 100 metres, and if within that 30 minutes of that 100 metres you find eggs, then you report on those, and then that's that 1 kilometre square done. If in your first 100 metres you don't find any eggs, then you can repeat that effort in a different area of the same square, in a different section of hedge, twice over more. So in other words, you make 3 efforts to find eggs along 3 lots of 100 metres. And if after 3 efforts you haven't managed to find any eggs, then that's a nil count and you move into a different square. Is that clear?
Yeah. Well, we'll send around everything as well. So again, if you have any questions, then you can get in touch with any of us. So thank you so much again to Jenny for taking the time to explain all of that to us. We were meant to be putting on sessions throughout this month and the next, but sadly lockdown had other plans, so I hope you've enjoyed this online session as well, and thank you all so much for attending as well. It's fantastic to see so many of you interested in brown hairstreak butterflies, and hopefully we'll get lots of you monitoring and helping our records as well. So yeah, just to repeat, I'll send around this presentation to everyone as a PDF, and hopefully the recording, as long as I've done it correctly. And then that'll have all the details as well of how you can get in touch with Jess to get your allocation of squares and to get started monitoring. And hopefully, hopefully you'll enjoy it and get lots of records as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for attending today. We've really enjoyed doing this for you.
Thank you.
There's lots of thank yous in the chat box if you can't see them. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Cheers. Bye.
Well done. That was brilliant.